Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Pop Dissected Podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing Demi Lovato's brand new documentary series, Dancing with the Devil. So far, 2 episodes have been released. As someone who has never particularly gravitated towards Demi's music or paid much attention to her as a celebrity, I have to say I was extremely moved by what has been released so far. I will say this podcast will include very sensitive topics, such as eating disorders, drug use, sexual assault, and suicide. I definitely think with subjects such as these, a content warning is absolutely necessary. Now, let's get into it with the first episode entitled Losing Control. In this episode, we learn Demi was in the process of recording a documentary while embarking on the Tell Me You Love Me tour. The initial documentary was shelved following her overdose, and was picked back up again this past year as an entirely different project, which would focus on her relapse, overdose, and what we can assume will be her journey into making her upcoming record, aptly titled After the Show. Demi discusses how her father was an alcoholic and a schizophrenic, who was abusive towards her mother. His addiction led to his death, and his body was found so much longer later, he was decomposing. Demi also elaborates how she wished she had a relationship with him, and was there for him, and continues on about how that trauma contributed to her addiction today. What I find interesting is she talks about how she's such an advocate for mental health and substance abuse, yet she feels such guilt she couldn't be there for her father in that same vein, which is tragic. But I found this to be one of the most interesting takes in this episode. When you're a celebrity, you're automatically given the platform of being a role model, a savior, a legend. The weight rests on your shoulders constantly, and I think that was a hard pill to swallow, and it seemed Demi never asked for any of that. And though she is a true inspiration, having that label tagged on her at all times seemed to make her feel alone. How can you be strong for so many people when it seems impossible to be strong for yourself? Demi's battles with her eating disorder began so early, in which she was in beauty pageants as a child. That in itself emphasizes beauty and appearance, and you carry that with you through your entire life, because that is what is taught to you. It's instilled in you. It's second nature, and naturally, you become more critical when you star on a kid's show, when you're on camera at all angles, at all times. The episode goes on to discuss how Demi's former team strictly oppressed her, essentially, policing her food intake, watching what she ate, how she ate. We have a scene actually where she sees costume sketches by an artist, and the models, being sketches, they're just, generically thin. And then new sketches are shown, reflecting Demi and her body type. And I found it interesting how something seemingly so simple as costume drawings for a tour can be so immensely triggering for her. She elaborates she then began extreme dieting and over-exercising. And when it comes to her food and her exercise, it was all largely monitored by her team at the time. And I'm sure with the parameters set around her, it seemed maybe natural or encouraged her to overdo her exercise and have more restrictive dieting. But they make a great point in this episode about how that control, that advocacy for being healthy and being sober is suffocating. When you're taught to live one certain way all the time, and that's your sole identity, and it's be careful around her with what you eat, you can't be around her if you drink, it sounds horrible. I've had people close to me who have tried to do that, police their food intake, their exercise, their weight. When you're so strict or forced to be so, you are being held hostage. How can you be happy when you're not only told how you should basically live, but when you yourself are being told what is wrong and what is right? Foods become demonized. Sweets are off limits. Burgers are terrible for you. It creates this almost warped sense of reality where you literally become scared of food. I mean, it's heartbreaking. One of Demi's friends, and I forget their name, so I apologize, talks about how she had to go and spend the night with Demi because she ate a cookie. And it's not elaborated further than that, but if Demi literally needed someone to be with her because of that, you can only imagine what is going on inside her brain at all times. Demi, under the pressure of these constrictions, relapsed. Any drug imaginable she experimented with. She drank. And that's the thing about relapses. When you're initially addicted, it's bad. And then you reel it in, or you're forced to do so, for your image no less. And when you break, the floodgates literally open, and it becomes worse than ever before. When you're suffocated, you rebel in the most extreme way. And I believe for Demi, it partly was in rebellion, sick of being so tied down to rules and regulations forced on by her former team at all damn times. Her family and friends reveal they had no clue Demi had become physically dependent on drugs at this point. She hid it so well. And this may be a controversial opinion, but addicts are great liars. They can lie about their use, hide their drugs, pretend to be okay, still exist in a seemingly normal way around others and within the world. I think with Demi's case, she became this poster child for recovery and self-love, and she couldn't ever let anyone know how bad she was struggling. She may have felt she was betraying her image, lying about her identity, and she may have felt she was betraying her image and lying about her identity. There are so many culminating factors that led to her relapse and overdose, and she overdosed. The focus of the second episode, 5 Minutes from Death, reveals the horrifying details of her overdose. After a seemingly normal night of hanging out with her friends, she called over her drug dealer, who gave her a laced drug, and when she was incoherently intoxicated, she was raped by him and left for dead. She was likely overdosing during her own assault. She was found with vomit all over her, and her skin began turning blue. She had 3 strokes, a heart attack, multiple organ failure, lost her vision temporarily, and had a machine sewn into her neck that cleaned her blood. Demi Lovato about died, and was close to it. It was revealed that it was reported to her parents she might have about 10 to 15 minutes before she passed away. What is shocking is when Demi first relapsed, she revealed all the drugs she did, and that probably should have killed her. And then they almost did. And I found this to be an incredibly real and raw docuseries thus far. I think so often we paint addicts as bad people. They're selfish or abusive or, cruel. And while Demi is a celebrity and her upbringing may be different from so many others, she explains so thoroughly how trauma can lead to substance abuse and self-harm and why we do it. People who become addicts become physically dependent at times, and they can die without their substance of choice. And it's heartbreaking to know how Demi was literally killing herself by doing these drugs, slowly but surely. I think we also have to think about people who are drug dealers themselves, people who essentially allow others to become addicted. I can never understand why someone would want to do that to another person. It's honestly scary to hear these things come out of her mouth and reported by her friends, but I think it paints such a vivid, cautionary tale of how things can spiral so quickly, so rapidly, and others just don't even know it's happening. Addicts have to pretend nothing is happening, so nothing threatens what they're addicted to. And I'm really interested and excited to see the rest of this series. The first 2 episodes were very raw and extremely painful to get through, honestly. It's hard hearing those things happen to anyone. But I do believe Demi has created an outlet for honest recovery, not being a poster child or an icon, shouting, "I'm sober." This series is allowing the world to know the truth about addiction, and how recovery is never a one and done, and it's not necessarily this easy ABC step outline. And I have to say, Demi Lovato is one hell of a woman. And though she's fallen down, she has gotten back up again. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.